Well, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending the webinar today on improving your driver payroll process. Driver payroll process is something that a lot of companies struggle with, and there's not a lot of great resources there on how to do it because everybody does it a little differently. So we're going to talk today in general about how we can make things better, but your situation, of course, may have unique challenges, and we're always happy to talk to you about those too, but that probably won't be in this webinar. So why don't we get this thing started here? Have the truck pull away. Here's a little bit about me. I'm Mike Ritzema. I'm the founder of Superior Trucking Payroll Service. I've been at this for a while, as you can see. And you've got experience in the field on your side of the table as well with a trucking company. Here's a little bit about the company that I work for. We're a full service payroll company. We help trucking companies. That's really all we do. We do everything every other payroll service does, but with trucking in mind. We understand that you're going to have advances for most of your drivers. We understand about reimbursements for lumpers. We know what lumpers are, things like that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I just wanted to let you know who's presenting the webinar to you. So we'll go from there. All right, today we're going to talk about 6 ways to make your driver payroll better, easier, and more efficient. And this should help your office people. This should help the drivers, and this should help the owners. The office people should free up some time for them to be able to do their job better and easier. For the drivers, it should offer more clarity in what they're getting paid for and more clarity in what's expected from them, which makes the office life easier. And by making those 2 lives easier, the owner's life is going to be easier because the office people have more time to spend on other things. And there's always other things. So we're going to talk about those, and then any questions, I'll caution in advance that I'm concerned that the questions here are going to be pretty detailed, and so I might not answer them now, but if you have a question, type it in the question box and the GoToWebinar spot there on what should be on the right side of your screen. If we can't answer it now, we'll definitely get back to you. But everybody's situation is a little different, so rather than having to write paragraphs in the little chat box, you can just say, hey, call me, I have a question about this. All right, 6 ways to make your driver payroll easier, or better and easier, and really more efficient, which is better for everyone involved. The first one is firm cutoff times. What we mean by that is when the drivers have to get their paperwork in to get paid that week. Many places will have a cutoff time on the books of Monday at 8 a.m., Tuesday at 8 a.m., Monday at noon, Tuesday at 10 a.m., whatever the time is. And then what happens is they get a call from a driver, say the cutoff's noon on Monday, and they call at 11:45 on Monday, and they go, oh, I got detained and I'm 30 miles out. Can you get my envelope in? And the office person wants to do the right thing, wants to keep the driver happy, wants obviously to keep him retained. You want to keep the driver around. So, okay, we'll let this one go and you can turn it in at 12:30. And then a couple weeks later, they call at 1 o'clock on Monday, hour after cutoff time, and say, oh, I'm 50 miles out. Can I get my paperwork in? And you're like, okay, this time we'll do it. And then all of a sudden now it's Monday at 4 and hey, I'm 200 miles out, and now you're doing it Tuesday morning. And it just gets out of control. And so if you want the drivers to respect your company and you want to respect the payroll people, the cutoff time's got to be firm with very rare exceptions. And those exceptions should really only be approved by senior managers. If the cutoff's noon, the cutoff's noon. If you want to give them till 1 o'clock, give them till 1 o'clock, but just make that your rule. The drivers will know what to expect. And what you'll find if you don't have a firm cutoff is that the drivers will keep pushing the envelope and pushing the envelope as far as they can go. And they won't get really concerned about making the cutoff time because they know that you'll squeeze it in for them anyway. It's a good intention thing that turns into a problem and turns the payroll life upside down because now they can't really even do anything with payroll because they know they're waiting for 6 more envelopes or something like that. So firm cutoff times are really important. The drivers will understand. They won't like it the first week, but if you give them a heads up, hey, our cutoff time's firm, that's just it. Otherwise, you'll pay them next week. If you have a driver that has an exceptional situation, you can make an exception. The other thing you could do would be to say, we can't get it in your pay this week, but we're going to advance you a couple $100 and take it out of you next week. Then put it in next week's payroll and take the advance back then, or however much you need to pay them. I think that'll help a lot in reducing the stress to the driver, because the driver's just trying to get paid, but they got to know that we're not messing around. The next one is pre-approval of exceptions. And by exceptions, I mean anything that's not normal for that load. For example, detention or layover, or for some reason they got paid extra to take that load. You should have policies in place already for the normal things. For example, if you're paying mileage, they're already going to have mileage rates. But maybe you pay an extra $150 to go to New York. It's a New York load, they automatically get the $150. As kind of a side recommendation, I'd say you should have those all written out somewhere so everybody knows them, including the drivers. But there's always going to be exceptions. It's trucking. It's going to happen. And so you're going to have people, the driver might put on their sheet, hey, I'm owed 3 hours detention. And then if there's nothing in place to how to manage that, the payroll processing person has to go look into the load, and they have to go talk to the dispatcher, and then they have to ask the manager if it's approved and if that's okay. And then sometimes there's some disagreement about whether it's approved or not, and it turns into a whole company meeting over $50 or $100. The better way to do it is to have the dispatcher or the manager, whoever can approve it, put it right in a note in your dispatch software, in your TMS, and say, Bill gets an extra $100 for detention, or Bill gets a $200 layover, or Bill gets a $200 bonus for whatever reason, or Bill does not get detention if they think that Bill's going to ask for detention and he's not owed it because he was late or something. He's going to say, well, the appointment was noon, you showed up at 12:30 and you got detained for 6 hours. Well, you missed your appointment, so that's on you. You don't get paid for it. Or whatever your policy is. But you can answer a lot of questions before they're asked, which will save not only the payroll person time, but it'll save the dispatcher or the manager, whoever's job it is to approve or deny these things. You can take care of almost all of them, if not all of them, just by putting notes in your TMS. And then you don't have to have meetings about this guy's exception and that girl's exception and this guy's exception and whatever, all the exceptions that you have to deal with, which also means that the payroll process can be started sooner and finished sooner, which is really the goal, is to get it finished as quickly as you can so you can move on to all the other things that you have to do. But that's a big one, pre-approval of exceptions. The next one is more for the processors. I call it touch the paperwork once. What I mean by that is the same paperwork, generally speaking. This is more true for truckload carriers, but I think there's probably some truth to it for the LTL guys and the shuttle guys as well. Your invoicing paperwork is the same paperwork as your payroll paperwork. So if you're billing a customer because you hauled a load 2,000 miles, you're probably paying the driver 2,000 miles. Set both of those up at the same time. So the envelope, just the trip envelope or the trip sheet or however you do it, just passes over your desk once, and then you can file it away and you're done with it. Versus doing all your invoicing and then coming back on Wednesday morning and going, oh, I got to do all my payroll things, and grabbing all those same envelopes out again and running through them all again and trying to work the totals. You can do it through the week. For example, let's say your cutoff was yesterday and you're done with this week and you're invoicing today things that came in today, which you should be doing. You can set those up for next week's payroll right now, and it's going to take you a little longer to do your invoicing because you're going to be doing your payroll at the same time, but you're going to pick up so much time on your payroll side that it's going to more than make up for it. And also you'll be doing your payroll through the week instead of a big burst at whenever their payroll deadline is. It can be really helpful to just touch it once. If you're going to touch the paperwork once, you need a good way to get your totals, because you won't get all of the driver's paperwork at once for the entire week. You're going to get one load at a time, and they may have another load later that you have to add in. So you need to be able to keep a running total of where you are with those drivers. Well, as luck would have it, see if I can do this right. We have one. This is a simple one. This is an Excel sheet. We've got drivers' names and IDs, and I made up all this information, of course. I highlighted the deductions as a different shade just to separate the areas. But you would just add in, you just put in here number 1, which pulls up John Smith. That's just a little lookup from this here. You don't have to do this. You could just type in John Smith, and you go 12395 whatever 99. Took the load on 1011. It's got 354 miles and $25 in extra stops, and it's got a $9.50 scale. And now you're done. And then at the end of the week, or when you're ready to send payroll, you highlight all your cells like this, and you sort them by that driver number. And again, I'm even making this a little complicated. It doesn't need to even be this hard. And then you go to subtotals here, and you say for each change in driver ID, I want the sum of miles and stops and detention and layover and advances. Check them all. Okay. Now we've got John Smith at 4,504 miles, $50 in extra stops, no detention, no layover, $200 in advances, 240 in lumper, 19 in scales. And your payrolls, that's the information that you need to send to either to your own payroll processor, to your payroll provider, your payroll service. That's the information they need. And so you can even button it up a little bit and make it like that. So you just see the totals, but then you lose the names. And that's the grand total. You also get grand totals to check on the bottom. This is really easy. I can email this to you. I would recommend modifications. This is a generic one. If you have owner operators, you're going to have a lot more deductions. If you might have other pay types, you might have other reimbursement types. You might just have one reimbursement column. That's up to you. But all those things can be added in, and the process will still work the same. And again, this is a quick and easy one to do. I would, like I said, I would be happy to talk to you about making this more complicated. It's going to kind of one of your mileage may vary sort of things. But just I wanted to show you that. So that's one way of doing it. There are other ways. But the idea is if you touch it once, you put it into that Excel sheet once and you move on, versus again having to go through all the paperwork again when you get to having to do your payroll. And then the phone rings and then this and that happens, you keep getting distracted. If you can just keep rolling it through, it's really going to pay off. The 5th one, make your pay statements easy to understand. I'm not talking about the taxes. I'm not talking about 401k, although that does matter. I'm really talking about helping the drivers understand how you got to their gross pay number and what deductions you took that are not health insurance and things. So for hourly people, probably most of the people in the webinar that are hourly or salaried, you kind of know what you're going to get every week. And if you're hourly, you might have 38 hours one week and 38 and a half the next week or something like that, but you have an idea. But as you know, the driver's pay varies greatly and it's not consistent, generally speaking. So they'll have different runs each week, especially if they're over the road. And so you really want to show them your work. By adding a couple columns to that Excel sheet that I just showed you, you can make a pay statement that's really easy to understand for the driver. And the part of why you do this is, number one, you want to help the driver, but you have some internal benefits as well. Especially the office will get a lot less calls. Did I get paid for this load? Did I get paid for that load? Did I get paid for that lumper? Did I get paid for whatever? And reducing those calls not only helps your office, reduce distractions and let them concentrate on what you intended them to do, but it also builds trust between the driver and the company because they know exactly what they're getting paid for. They know exactly which loads. And I've got a part of a pay stub that I've concocted here. I cut off the top part because it's not important who they work for and it's not important who they are. And it's kind of big identity theft things, but you get the idea. And I also cut out their tax things. Let's see here, pointer options, pen, there we go. They have a lot of loads like these bigger ones up here, 300 miles. and they get all these loads, but they've got these little ones in the middle, 70 miles, 58 miles, and 3 miles. I'd like to think that they wouldn't sweat the 3 mile one for $1.20, but we all know drivers and they will. So you want to show them, look, we paid you for those 3 miles, and we paid you for the 70 miles, and we paid you for the 58 miles right there. And so these are all the different pays that you got during the week that we're processing. And so this 960, which is the total of their pay, goes right over here. I'm not going to be John Madden on the telestrator, clearly. Right there. That's their gross pay, 960. Now they have per diem, and that all works out itself later, but they can see exactly how you got to that $960 number, and they know you're not making it up. And if there was something missing, let's say you missed a 200-mile load for some reason, they'd look at it and say, oh, my Grand Rapids to North Lake is missing. You guys owe me 200 miles, and you guys could fix it, and you could fix it quickly, and the driver doesn't have to spend a week complaining in truck stops about how their trucking company screwed them. I mean, we all make mistakes, but if you can fix it, that's the key. So another thing that I like about this is a real pay stub, is this part down here. What this client does is they will show you, hey, these are the loads that we have that you should have delivered by now. This was from May, obviously, but we don't have paperwork for, or we didn't have paperwork in time to pay you. That does a couple of things. Number one, it shows your work again, that look, we know you're not getting paid for these loads this week, and we'd like to pay you. But if you know okay, I turned in this load yesterday, like they get the, after processing time, and I turned in this load, but I didn't turn in this one yet. That's still sitting in my truck. I got to get that in. Also helps you get the bills quicker. It stops anything from lagging out there. They have one that's lagging out there clearly from 2 years ago. That's probably a voided load or something. But again, that's something that could be addressed versus never billing it because you never got your bills lighting. So I really like how this works. And all this stuff, this is a pay stub that we draw for people. This is all this stuff in the middle here is all this is editable. We can make it however you want it, depending on what you send us. But I think it's really nice that they show their drivers, here's what we're paying, and here's what you're getting. So that, again, I think that's a very helpful thing to be able to show them. So here's the last suggestion that we have for today. Make your pay stubs available to the drivers anytime when they want them. You got to email them out somehow. Everybody has email. Okay, not everybody has email tests. Only a very slight hyperbole. Nearly everyone has email. And they can get their pay stubs and they can see it. We recommend that you send them out as soon as you can. As soon as your payroll's finished, send out the pay stubs to the drivers so that they know what's coming. I don't want to generalize, but I'm going to anyway. If the husband drives and the wife stays home, or just works out is home based, like works from home, has what they would call a regular job, not a trucking job, she's probably the one running the money in the house, and she always wants to know what he's getting paid. And those are the worst calls to get as an employer, because you really can't talk to the spouse, even if you know her, and even if your company treats them like family. You can't reveal that information. Now, if the driver, the employee, gives you an email address that the spouse, the wife, has access to, that's on them, and they can check it that way. And then the wife in that example knows exactly what's coming in. Say you process payroll on Wednesday and you pay on Friday. They can know Wednesday afternoon, hey, we're going to have $700 in our bank account, or whatever their net pay is, on Friday. And the wife can plan her home financial life accordingly, if they have to pay rent or cell phone bills or car payments or whatever. Because working in a trucking company, we took a number of calls years ago about, how much is my check this week? Usually Thursday and Friday morning. How much is my check this week? How much is my check this week? How much is my check this week? I've got a cell phone bill due. I've got whatever bill due. Those calls are a waste of time. They're wasting your employees' time. They're wasting the driver's time. There's an easy way to do this. In addition to emailing them, I recommend that you have them through an ESS, employee self-service module, or our clients have it through truckingpaychecks.com. But if there's other ways to do it. It doesn't have to be through the way that we do it, but just make them available 24/7 so the driver can look up anytime. Another advantage of that is that if they have some sort of way to get their pay stubs, that when they are getting a mortgage or a car and they need the last 4 pay stubs, they're not calling your people that are trying to do your invoicing, which is what brings money into your business, and saying, hey, I need my pay stub from 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and last week. That you can just send them right to wherever you store the pay stubs, and if they can log on, they can get them, and they can get their W-2s, and they can get all that stuff. It's really helpful. It doesn't sound like a big deal, like it would dramatically impact your life through driver payroll, but I assure you that anytime you can cut those phone calls out, it saves your billing people time, because they're typically the ones who have to answer the phone, or your payroll person time. Can't recommend it enough, and it's really low cost to be able to do these kinds of things. Oh shoot, I'm still on the highlighter, aren't I? Let's see here. All right, just a little bit about us. We kind of talked about this already, that we understand trucking and we understand per diem. By the way, little news for everybody who hasn't heard yet. Per diem was announced last week. The IRS announced that as of October 1st of this year, so you can start right now, per diem went from $63 a day to $66 a day. That's a nice win. It's $3 a day, but it makes paying per diem that much more important. If you're listening to this and you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to call us. We'll tell you how, if you're in a company, we can save you money by paying people the right way, and we can put more in your driver's paycheck. We have a webinar about this that we've done a number of times. We did it for the Ohio Trucking Association a few months ago. Again, it's really important and it's really powerful. Could be a great recruiting tool, could be, anyway, it's a whole nother webinar. But I encourage you to consider that if you're somebody who doesn't pay per diem and you have over-the-road trucks. So yeah, per diem just went up. I meant to tell you that in the very beginning as a special for those who attend versus those who just get the slides and won't hear about it because they don't get the audio. This is when we usually ask for questions. Again, I know that a lot of people's questions are going to be more detailed. And so it may not be something that fits in the little question box that we have today. I want you to feel free to reach out to us. We're going to send you the slides. Phone number's right on the slide here. Call me, and just, you don't have to be a client to call. You can just, if you just say, hey, I got your webinar, I got a question about how we're going to do this. How do we handle advance approvals, or how do we reconcile our advances, which is more of an advanced topic. We can talk about that, and we can have suggestions for you. It's a little too detailed to get into in this webinar, and I understand that too. And also, people may not want to reveal where they're struggling with their payroll, and that's fair too. But reach out to us, and we'll be happy to help you. Like I said, I don't expect any questions because they're too detailed. If you have any, please type them in, and I'll see if I can answer it in the time allotted. We will be sending this out, the slides out, to everybody, like I said. So you'll have those to review. It probably won't have my wonderful telestrating on it, but that's a small price to pay. But we'll give you like 30 seconds to see if you have questions, and then we'll wrap this thing up a little bit early, because again, this is question time. The last 5 or 6 minutes is traditionally when we get questions from people. Also, if you have suggestions for future webinars, you can always put that in the question box too, or reach out to us and say, we'd like a webinar about this. We've got a couple that we're cooking up now. We're trying to get some other specialists to contribute some webinars, and if they do, we'll be happy to present them. We're going to make them educational and not salesy. Not why you should use this fuel card instead of that fuel card, or why you should buy Freightliners instead of something else, or why you should never buy Freightliners, or whatever. That would be from the Volvo dealership telling you why you should never buy Freightliners. That's not our goal with the webinar. So, well, I think I've answered all the questions that I can. There are some that I can't answer now, but I'll get back to those people. So I want to thank you for attending today. I hope you found it to be worthwhile. Again, we welcome your feedback. We might reach out to you to ask you what you thought. And we'll be doing this again next month, and we'll announce the topic in a couple of weeks. So thank you for attending, and have a great day.